Welcome to Pre-Algebra Section 5.4, Proportions. We'll start today's lesson with the definition of proportion. A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equal. My first example of a proportion is 1/2 is equal to 4/8. When I simplify the fractions, I find that 1/2 is in simplest form, but 4/8 can be simplified. The GCF is 4 times 1 and 4 times 2. The GCF of 4 cancels. I'm left with the proportion or the ratio of 1/2. Now I have 1/2 equals 1/2, so therefore 1/2 equals 4/8 is a proportion. I'm also going to show an example that is not a proportion. I have 1/2 is equal to 5/20. Again, I will simplify. 1/2 is already simplified. 5/20 can be simplified. The GCF is 5, so 5 times 1, 5 times 4. The 5's cancel. Simplest form is 1/4. I now have determined that 1/2 is supposed to equal 1/4. That is not the case, so therefore I can state that 1/2 is not a proportion set equal to 5/20. Our second definition for today is cross products. Cross products are found by multiplying the denominator of each ratio by the numerator of the other ratio. For example, if I have 1/2 is equal to 4/8, we have already determined that these are a proportion. I will now take the denominator and multiply it by the opposite numerator. 8 times 1 is equal to, and then I'll take the other denominator, multiply it by the numerator, so I have 2 times 4. I find that I have 8 equals 8. This shows that this is how to complete a cross product. It also shows that this is a proportion. An example of a cross product. For example, I'm going to use 1/2 is equal to 4/8 again. Sometimes students will attempt to try to make a cross product by saying, oh, I'm going to multiply the numerator by the opposite numerator, and I'll multiply the denominator times the opposite denominator. When you see that we do this, I end up with 4 is equal to 16. This is not equal. This is not cross multiplying. Now that we know the definition of cross products and proportions, we are going to use cross products to determine if we have ratios that can form a proportion. So I have two fractions, 10/18 and 15/27. I'm going to write this as a possible proportion. And you'll note here I have the equal sign, and I have a little question mark because I'm not sure if it's going to work. So I'm going to use my cross products rule, and I'm going to say 10 times 27 is equal to 18 times 15. When I multiply 10 times 27, I end up with 270. When I multiply 18 times 15, I end up with 270. This is, yes, a proportion. Going on to example letter B. Again, I have 9/12. I'm wondering if it's going to be equal to 2/15. I have to determine if this is going to be a proportion or not. So I'm going to use the cross products rule. 9 times 15 is equal to 12 times 12. And when I do this, I recognize right away that 12 times 12 is 144. Now, whenever I multiply by a number that the ones place is a 5, I recognize that the n number, the ones place, has to be a 0 or a 5. So right away, I'm thinking that this cannot be a proportion. But I will do the math and figure out for sure what 9 times 15 is. 9 times 15 is 135. Just as I was guessing, I recognize that this is not a proportion. So I'll say no, not a proportion. Moving on to the next part, we will be doing cross products, but this time we're going to solve with cross products. So when I look at this, I'm going to do my cross product. I'm going to go b times 2. So I have 2b is equal to 9 times 20. And now I have to solve for b. In order to undo multiplying 2 times b, I'm going to divide by both sides by 2. On the left-hand side, I can cancel the 2's. I'm left with b. On the right-hand side, I note before I do any multiplication that I can simplify by canceling. The 2 and the 20 cancel, so I end up with 9 times 10, which is 90. For problem letter B, again, 12 times k is equal to 6 times 8. Once again, to undo multiplying by 12, I will divide by 12 on both sides. The 12's cancel, k is equal to. On the right-hand side, I note before I multiply that I can cancel the 6 and I can cancel the 12. So now I have 1 times 8, which is 8, divided by 2. And once again, we can simplify this further. The final answer is 4. We will continue solving, but you'll notice C and D problems here are a little bit different. I now have in the numerator of both of these a variable and a number. So I have an expression. I will still use cross products as I previously did. So I will go 4 times the quantity, and that's when I put in my parentheses, x plus 2, with the closing parentheses, is equal to 2 times 3. So now I have this equation. I will now distribute the 4 to eliminate the parentheses. So I have 4x plus 8 is equal to 6. I need to get 4x all by itself, so I will minus 8 from both sides. When I minus 8 from both sides, I end up with 4x is equal to negative 2. And now I have to undo multiplying 4 by x, so I will divide by 4 on both sides. When I divide by 4 on both sides, the 4's cancel. And on the right-hand side, I can simplify my fraction to negative 1/2. Moving on to problem D, once again, I will I will cross multiply 4 times the quantity x plus 3 is equal to, I will multiply 2 times 5. On the left-hand side, I will distribute the 4. So I have 4x plus 12 is equal to 10. In order to get 4x by itself, I will subtract 12 from both sides. 4x is equal to negative 2. Dividing by 4 on both sides, the 4's cancel. X is equal to, simplifying negative 2/4, I end up with negative 1/2. Now, it's interesting to note that both of these problems have the same answer, but you can see from the very beginning, both of these problems are different. So I want you to be aware that we can have fractions as answers. Sometimes you can end up with the same answer, even though the problems are starting out at the beginning differently. Also acceptable, you could put it in decimal form. So either answer would be acceptable.